Hey everybody, I'm Dave Taylor. I'm one of the marketing team here at Impartner, and I'm very excited to be here and talk to you about an important topic. I hope I do it justice, and I hope that I'm able to communicate to you the importance of the concept behind building and establishing an ROI validated channel program. This is the result of a lot of work that we've done over the last year at Impartner, including literally, no exaggeration, hundreds of interactions and interviews with customers that we work with. And it was all kicked off for us because over the last few years, this has been a tough environment. You heard Joe say this morning that McBain says 100,000 channel managers, laid off over the last 7-8 months. This has been a tough environment. Things have been difficult for software companies and all companies. And budgets are tight and et cetera. I mean, I've got a whole list of kind of challenges that we deal with. What we wanted to do was get an understanding for what was behind this apparent shrinkage in importance in the indirect go-to-market model, and see if we could figure out what some of the key things were that was happening in our space. So we came up with what we call an ROI validated program. Have any of you gone through our workshop already on an ROI validated program? Good. So I hope this will be new, and I hope this will be interesting for you. We wanted to build a framework that takes a lot of the data that you have from running a partner program, running a whole ecosystem, and turn it into communications that you can share with your organization to help them understand, what the hard sterling return is on your partnering programs. So I'm bleeding off the screen a little bit. I don't know if there's anything we can do about that, but I'm kind of losing the left side of my screen a little bit. Can we shift that in at all? Do we know? Is there anybody back there? Apparently not. Well, I'll just tell you what it says. So if it really is true, as analysts say, that I've read 75, I've read 80, that 75+% of global spending goes through indirect channels, why is it so hard to get investment? I was speaking to somebody earlier about their CRM, and they're on a CRM platform that may not be the greatest for them, and they were talking about migrating to Salesforce. And they said, we could never change our CRM. It's too critical. Okay, all right, let's assume that your CRM is absolutely critical to your business. It's really important to the 20% of your revenue, right? Why is PRM not that important in the 80% of your revenue? And I think a lot of it has to do with these two things. These are two kind of different conversations. These are insights that you get from a CRO. In a conversation with the CRO and a CEO and a CFO, when you sit down and talk to them, they understand the KPIs that they manage their direct sales organization with. They understand what the account executive quotas are. I know what your quota is, right? You're my direct sales person. I know what your quota is. I know what thank you. I know what pipeline I need to give you in order to establish your quota. I know what your sales cycles are. I know what your average selling price is. I know all of this data in my direct world. You heard Trevor talk about our dandelion theory, right? You can go to your C-suite and you can say, our channel is so important. Can you prove it? Of course not, but I blew a dandelion into the wind, and I know a lot of them landed and grew. I just can't tell you how many or where, right? How many of you, and maybe I'll even ask you by show of hands, how many of you assign partner quotas? I mean a real quota, where if they make it, they get a bonus, and if they don't make it, they get a penalty. Anybody? All right. Do you know what? Okay, let me ask you a question over here. Quota and pipeline. If I were to say to you that in one period of time, call it a year, call it a quarter, call it a month, whatever, you need to generate $1 million, 1 million pounds, 1 million euros of direct revenue, how much pipeline do you need to turn into 1 million in revenue?
Somewhere between 3 to 5 times.
3 to 5. Did somebody say 10? Wow, that's a low close rate. I mean, right?
Yeah.
Different model, different business. I totally get it. 3 to 5. Who says 3%? Who says 3x? 3. You say 3? All right, great. Everybody knows that. That's a metric that you understand and that everybody understands. If you have to generate $1 million in revenue through your partner community, what kind of pipeline do you need to have to cover that? I got to blow a lot of dandelions, right? You just don't know. We don't know this information. And our statement to you is, if you don't know this, you're going to struggle to answer this question of, am I getting an ROI from my channel program? All right, but I don't want to be theoretical. I want to be really pragmatic. So we built a 12-step program. It's different than the 12-step program I went through when I was recovering from alcoholism, but it is a good 12-step program. And you can see the 12 different steps here. But for purposes of conversation, we've grouped them into these 4 columns, these 4 kind of broad pillars. Pillar 1, establishing goals, setting what your KPIs are, sitting back before you even start the dialogue, before you even start the journey, talking about what we're going to accomplish, what goals we're going to set, how we're going to track it. This one right here is the first time you start looking outbound. This is all internal. Externally, what's my IPP, my ideal partner persona? What really am I looking for in an ideal partner? And by the way, if I were to ask you how many of you have an IPP, some of you would raise your hand and say, oh yeah, we got that. I bet you don't have it by segment. I bet you don't have an ideal persona for your MSPs and your strategic alliance partners and your distributors and your resale partners and your post-sales solution provider partners, right? So there's a lot of work that needs to be done in creating what that ideal partner persona is. And by the way, I want to tell you that well, we'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, onboarding, getting your partners to apply, getting them ramped. So this is external. Once you've got all of this done and you've got a fully engaged and revenue generating partner program, pillar 3, you go to market together. And go to market is not just shaking the tree harder and harder to see how much fruit you can get from the tree. Go to market together means planting more trees together, right? We've got partners in the room, or we have had. We're not really good at that, are we, Amy? We shake the tree harder and harder. We need to plant more trees, right? Going to market with your partners, all the way down through CPQ. I don't know how many of you give your partners access to your CPQ system to actually generate quotes for you. Sometimes you do, sometimes you make them call and work it out. By the way, in pillar 3 is the single most important step of the whole process. Step 7, I will give you my opinion. Step 7 is the most important thing. If you're trying to prove ROI for your channel program and you don't attribute leads and deal reg back to where they came from and back to what partner engaged with them in, it's like letting the air out of your tire before you even start the race. All right. And then finally, the 4th pillar is reporting, tracking. I call it the lather, rinse, repeat column, right? Where you've done all the work, you've tracked closed lost and closed won, and now you're going to take this lather, rinse, repeat all the way back. In his roadmap presentation, Trevor talked about some of the AI features that we have coming out that we're working on now that will be available later this year or next year, right? Forget Impartner for a minute and just think about AI. If you want AI to be a fundamentally important part of what you do on your indirect, or come on, really, your direct business, you've got to start building a data model today that will allow AI access. If you have a variety of tools in your environment that each have their own pool of data associated with them, it's going to be really hard for you to put an AI engine on top of that, to consume that, and to give you meaningful input. Again, whether it's Impartner, whether it's some other AI engine, if you want to have meaningful engagement with AI in your indirect go-to-market, you've got to start thinking now about what the data model is. That was just an aside. That's not what we're talking about, but it's important, so think about that. All right, we talk to people, we sit down with customers, we do these one-on-one workshops with them, and we give them a scorecard. And we say, you know what, you didn't do this and you didn't do that. You're pretty good on building it. And by the way, I'll show you when we talk about Pillar 2, this is the most liberally over-reported element of all 12 of them, where people always say they have an IPP. That's all right. We'll spot you that, right? But it's pretty over-reported. But these are the report cards that we generate for people. All right. Now, when we do these workshops, when we talk to you in settings like this, and when we sit down face-to-face and do workshops, there's 3 things we're trying to accomplish. Number 1, we want to help you establish what the current ROI of your channel program is, right? My boss, Joe, he's not in here. If I said to Joe, hey, on our direct sales team, we've decided that we want to implement Gong. Does anybody use Gong? You know, it records the calls and gives you a synopsis of the calls and stuff. We want to implement Gong, and it's going to cost us $20,000. But I can prove to you that it's going to generate a 5% uplift in my direct sales. It doesn't take a Hewlett-Packard 12C calculator for Joe to figure out that that's a really good ROI. Well, I'm going to spend 20. You know, we're a $300 million company. We're not really. But, you know, 5% of that, that's a really good ROI. If I say, Joe, we've got to implement an MDF tracking and reporting tool, and I'm not 100% sure what it's going to return, but it's really important. We really should try it. There's just no way. So we want to help you understand what the ROI is that you're generating today. Then we want to help you put together a set of strategies for improving on the ROI. I know you're skeptical. I feel waves of skepticism. I'm not trying to sell you more software. I'm trying to up-level the role of partnering in your go-to-market programs. I want you to have awesome careers, and I want your indirect channel to be winning awards because of how good it is, right? I want to help you with strategies. And then finally, I want to help you use those strategies to unlock the investment in more software. You know, I tried my best not to sell. For 1 minute, I tried not to sell. No, but you know what I'm saying, right? This is what's so important. All right. So in order to do this analysis, we took input from literally hundreds of our customers. And we grouped them together into 2 cohorts. Cohort number 1 was non-optimized companies. And by non-optimized, what I mean is, if they did one of the things in a pillar, I didn't count them as having optimized. To be optimized, they have to do 2 or more in the different pillars. So a non-optimized company means they may be doing 1, they may be doing 0, but they're not doing any more than 1 in any broad pillar. So we look at this and we say, all right, we love you, but you're not an optimized company. I'm going to take your data and I'm going to include you in that first non-optimized cohort. Our second cohort is, well, I mean, if that's non-optimized, it's everybody else. It's people that have done 2 or more steps per pillar. Right? Does that make sense? You're following me in this? Okay. So when we look at this all together, my gosh, this is so controversial. I hope I don't get in trouble. Joe's not in, right? He's okay, good. So I want you to know that when I break these groups into SMB, small to mid-sized business, and enterprise, the harsh reality is you're getting a negative ROI on your spend if you're in that non-optimized cohort. We had a very, very specific conversation with a company that was generating negative ROI on their program spend. And I understand what they're saying. We're doing good. I understand their point, which is, you know, we bought the PRM. We've hired some people. We're just starting to work. Because I'm a huge, who's the famous, he did the driving show and now he's got a farm. Jeremy Clarkson. I know Jeremy Clarkson, so I'll give it to you in his analogy. What this company was saying is, we bought the field, we bought the tractor, We've plowed the field and planted the seeds, but we're not going to get value from it until the end of the season when we harvest. So it's okay for me to see a negative ROI there because this is a company that's investing with the expectation of a return in the future. I'm okay with that. I hope it doesn't stay negative for very long. Enterprise companies, you really shouldn't be generating a negative ROI if you're in an enterprise company because so much of that is already in place. All right, so these are the average ROIs for non-optimized companies. I'm going to use these as the benchmark for what we talk about on the next few slides. Okay, here's my 4 pillars, and we know that optimizing, meaning, finishing 2 or more of these is hugely important. Remember what the pillars are. Establishing KPIs, selecting and engaging with your partner organization, going to market together, and then returning and reporting. All right, my 4 pillars. Which do you think has the biggest single impact on ROI? Shout it out. 4? 2. Who said 2? You said 2? Let's do this. Who says pillar 1? Establishing KPIs and goals. All right. Trevor said yes. Who says 2? Half of this room says 2. Who says 3? Who besides Amy says 4? All right, I have to tell you that other than Trevor, you're all wrong. Really, it's number 1. And there's a reason for that, and I'll explain the reason. When you go through the process of sitting down with your executive team and establishing KPIs and having the dialogue with them about, hey, we need to work on quotas and we need to segment into the different teams and I need to start working and thinking about how this is going to work, it demonstrates organizational commitment to the indirect model. And while I can't separate that out on its own, I want to tell you that I believe an engagement of any kind with your executive team that shows that kind of organizational commitment is what makes the most difference. When we go out and talk to a customer, and I've heard this already from somebody here today, who says, oh, our CEO is really invested in the indirect model. They're pushing me to get this stuff done. All right, there's a pre-established organizational commitment to the model. If I talk to somebody who says, yeah, our CEO is a little bit skeptical, and when we bring them a deal that a partner closed, all the CEO says is, we'd have had that deal anyway. All we did on that deal is we gave away margin, right? Now, there's no organizational commitment. So if you can't get your executive team to sit down with you and have the dialogue around KPIs, etc., it's a problem. Now, on each one of these things, I'm going to give you an action item after today's summit. Here's what I want you to go do, right? Number 1 action item for this, go sit down with your executive team and establish this kind of organizational commitment. You can tell from my hair color, I've been in business a long time. And I know that it's sometimes easy to kind of avoid the hard conversation and just assume that you're going to get there eventually. No. Have the hard conversation, have it up front, get organizational buy-in and commitment, because everything else gets easier after you do that. So go sit down and have that dialogue. All right, optimizing pillar number 2. And the way to read these charts over here, by the way, these are my non-optimized, right? Small to mid-sized business and enterprise, right? This middle group right here, which I messed up my color coding on wisely, but you know what I'm saying here. This is my SMB and this is my enterprise. And as you saw on this one, these guys go from a minus 63% to a 235%, and the enterprise team goes up to a 483% ROI. I'm not making these numbers up. These are numbers that come from the analysis we've done with literally hundreds of companies, all right? This last group over here is, rather than one column, if they optimize all of the pillars, this is what the ROI is. So I'm on pillar 2 here, right? So pillar 2 has a lower return here and here. These stay the same because this is optimizing all your pillars. Lower return. Why is that? Well, the reality is most people say, yes, we've optimized this pillar. But in most companies, they're only checking the box. Pillar 2 has the lowest ROI growth because most people think they're already doing it. I want to tell you that if it's not written down then it's not real. I want to see, you tell me that you have your IPP by segment. Yeah, prove it. Show me the document that describes that, right? And when I see that, I'll start to believe that you've optimized this. And by the way, it's not just about defining that. Okay, so listen to the connection between pillar 1 and 2. If you don't know how your quotaing works, I don't know if quotaing is a word, if you don't know how assigning quota works in your partner program, how do you know how to size your ecosystem? There's a very good chance that you're over or undersizing your partnering ecosystem, right? If I don't know how much quota I'm going to assign to my sales team, I don't know how many of them I need. It's exactly the same with partners. And, despite the fact that I love to sell partner licenses, it's not always the more the merrier. It's the more the better, the merrier. The more better, you know what I'm saying? The more good partners, the better. Right? That worked finally, didn't it? Yeah. So, sizing your ecosystem and then understanding who you're looking for, starting to recruit, starting to onboard, and don't let go of them until you've got a deal. Our data shows that if you can get a new partner into a revenue-generating situation within the first 3 months, they're almost 3 times more likely to be revenue-producing years down the road. Get them to a deal. I don't even care if you have to, don't tell Pierre I said this, but I don't even care if you have to take a deal away from your direct team and give it to the partnering team. Get them to close a deal, pay them the margin on it, assign the MDF from it, and they'll be generating revenue for you for years to come. All right. Pillar number 3, going to market together. Building the go-to-market engine, starting to generate demand gen. By the way, in the demand gen world, so much of what our partners talk about as being demand gen is, I used to call it Rolodex, but I don't think it's called that anymore. I don't know what do you call what used to be called a Rolodex? I've got my contact list. I've got my contact database, right? And what I'm going to do for demand gen is I'm going to keep talking to those same 700 customers, and I'm going to keep trying to sell them my widget. I'm talking about more than that. I'm talking about broadening the top of your funnel and getting new people into the top of your funnel. And I, as a vendor, I can help you with that. I can help broaden the top of the funnel for a partner so that rather than just being more efficient at harvesting what they already have in their contact database, you can actually start expanding that. Our Google ads for the channel product, etc., all help kind of broaden the top of that funnel, etc. And here again, lead and opportunity attribution, absolutely vital. All right, observations and what I want you to do out of this. Look at the percentages. 20% of SMB and mid-market customers optimize pillar number 3, barely. And in the SMB space, of the 5 different elements that we have in pillar 3, nobody had more than 2 done. Attribution, attribution is such a rare thing. It really needs to be done. Enterprise is a lot better at it. So what I'm saying to you as the takeaway from pillar 3 is, no matter what lead gen activities you engage in with your partners, you have to establish lead distribution with attribution, deal registration with attribution. Okay, finally, pillar number 4, reporting and analytics. Once again, this is stepping back and really taking a hard data-focused look at what did we generate, what did we generate. And this is why you see attribution being so critically important, because it can't just be a hunch, it can't just be a guess. If you don't want to attribute revenue, but you want to attribute influence, I'm okay with that as long as you quantify it and track it and report on it and set your goal on that. So if I'm going to set a goal of $1 million that need to be produced by a partner, then they need to be generating demand and they need to be closing sales. If I just want to have them involved in influencing 10 deals, I love that KPI. I got no problem with that. Track it, report on it, otherwise you get no value out of it. So you can see what the increase is in that as well. So that's it. Okay. My action item to do for you on the whole thing. If you do nothing else, please work on pillar 1 and work on pillar 4. Establish the goals, track and report on the goals. Do it like your job depends on it. Because you want to know something? It does, right? I hate the fact that people in the indirect space are getting hit with budget cuts and layoffs. And it happens because a CFO says, I've got to pare down my payroll by 10%. I can't let this salesperson go because they have a $2 million quota and I need that money. In the partner space, not 100% sure. Let's cut it, right? You got to do pillar 1 and you got to do pillar 4. All right. Optimizing all of the pillars, again, the lower is my SMB, so you can see what the return is. I'm telling you that if you spend the time, and by the way, I know it seems like a lot, but I'll give you kind of a head start on it in a minute. It seems like a lot. In our tool, we have a lot of this set up for reporting and tracking already. But it doesn't have to be our tool. You can do this with a lot of different PRM systems in the market, right? If you optimize all of the pillars, all 12 steps in the pillars, I'm not making a guarantee on this, but I'm telling you, across hundreds of companies that we talk to, they went from a minus 63 to 336% ROI. Hey, C-level team, for every dollar you spend in my indirect business, you're going to get $3.36 in return. Well, that's a number I can take to the bank. Enterprise companies, even better. All right, so here you go. Embrace the ROI validated framework. You're going to get a 5x ROI on it. These are your pillars. Focus on these. If nothing else, do pillars 1 and 4. Establish your current ROI. What I want to tell you is as you think about this, in your bag, there's a piece of paper that has a QR code on it. You can scan the QR code, and it will take you to what we call Impartner University. And there's a class on Impartner University around the ROI validated framework. It's a good class. It's a half-hour long. It may be a little elementary for some of you because you're very deep in this already and you may understand it. But we have 2 people here that are experts at helping you go through a very specific, targeted, and personalized workshop with you. Prue and Oliver, and also our partners, Amy and other partners, are able to go through this with you and generate specific recommendations for you. If you know Prue, if you know Oliver, if you know Amy, our 2 folks and our partner, you can book with them a specific personalized one-on-one workshop where they'll ask you a bunch of difficult questions that you may or may not know the answer to off the top of your head, but through the research process of finding the answers to those questions, we'll be able to tell you what your current ROI is. We'll be able to recommend strategies for enhancing your ROI and give you tools for communicating that to the C-suite, all with the goal of helping the C-suite understand the criticality of the work that y'all are doing.